Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Agency Operators Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Travis Ziegler of Profitable Pineapple. How you doing, Travis?
Doing well, Pasha. Thanks for having me on.
Really excited to chat with you. Uh, we've been chatting back and forth for a while, and I'm kind of impressed with all the things, starting with the fact that you're a doctor, the only doctor I know so far in the FBA space. And then, you sold a brand and got into the agency space, and now you're acquiring brands. So you're doing quite a lot, and I'm sure you're very, it's interesting to hear perspectives from people who have seen so many different facets. So I'm happy to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. And yeah, it's I feel incredibly exhausted this week because we actually just closed on our second acquisition last week. So there's a lot of due diligence in that. We'll probably get into that a little bit later. But yeah, lots going on. But I have a great team behind me that helps out tremendously. And yeah, we'll talk about that more too, probably.
Cool. So congratulations, first of all.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
would love to hear a little bit, kind of going back in time a little. And yeah, you're a doctor, you're seeing patients. How do you decide to make this giant pivot into e-commerce?
I think it's being in the right place at the right time and just serendipity kicking in as well. I graduated in 2010 with my doctorate in optometry. I'm an eye doctor by trade. And right when I graduated, I started working at my uncle's practice, and it was Dr. Ziegler, 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 and Ziegler. It was my uncle, my wife, me, and my cousin. And so there's a lot going on in that practice, and it was a pretty good sized practice. So I was seeing about 6 patients an hour, but I felt like there was something that was just off. And I couldn't tell you what it was. I didn't know I was an entrepreneur at the time. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was, but I knew something was off. And my wife and I always wanted to move south. And so we did the 3 things you're not supposed to do. We quit our jobs. We moved from Columbus, Ohio down to South Carolina, and we started 2 practices. And so started our own journey in entrepreneurship. But the problem was we bought these practices that were very small. And I went from 6 patients an hour to 1 patient an hour. And so when that happened, I was bored naturally as an entrepreneur. I got to have something to do with my hands. And if I don't have anything to do with my hands, then I don't know what to do. So we started an online business, took a course called Amazing Selling Machine. I think we were in version 4 of that course. It's probably on like 20 something now. But version 4 of that course back in 2015, learned how to sell on Amazon, built a sunglass company up to about 3.2 million. When I started seeing in around 2016, 2017, that China can just come out with the same product you have and release it on Amazon FBA and cut your price significantly. And so I started noticing that trend back in probably 2016, actually. So a year into our journey. And we started pivoting on serving a person. And so we saw a lot of dry eye people in our clinic, dry eye patients. And so we wanted to serve that dry eye community because we saw how devastating it is. And so that's dry eyes. So like your eyes are irritated, they're itchy, you can't keep them open because they're so dry. And so we wanted to come out with products around dry eye. We started that brand in 2017, built that up to around $500,000 per month, and then ended up selling it to a corporation that was in the eye care space. And then that corporation sold to private equity. And so then I got to work for private equity for about 18 months. And during that time, I saw how private equity worked by buying other brands that are similar and making one big roll up and then selling that later on. They're actually planning on selling that in about a year's time to then for a bigger exit. Because what we don't understand as smaller e-commerce owners is that when you have a smaller brand, the multiple can be anywhere from like 2 to 3x your profit. But when you roll up a bunch together and your multiple or your profit goes higher, you can then sell for a 10x multiple. So meaning like if you have a $500,000 business that's in profit, you could sell for maybe 1.5 to 2 million. But if you roll that into another group that has $10 million in profit, that's going to sell for 100 million. So you're going to get a 10x on your money. And so I saw that firsthand and them doing that. And I was like, why can't I do that? And that what birthed what we're doing now is acquiring brands to roll them all up together. Our goal is 10 brands, 10 years, 10 million in profit to sell for 100 million. So that is the last 10 years of my life all rolled up into about 5 minutes time. I didn't even mention the agency in there. The agency was started, it's called Profitable Pineapple Ads. That's hence that. And the reason we came out with the agency was because of my frustration around hiring agencies in the Amazon space. Went with about 3 or 4 different ones, tried some different softwares, didn't like any of them, what they did is they just spent a ton of money, told me it was working when I knew it wasn't, because I'd look at the numbers and data. And that's what made me start Profitable Pineapple. We're a small boutique agency. We service about 30 to 40 clients at a time and usually have a wait list. And so that started in around 2018, I believe. And yeah, we're a small team, but we've been running that for about 7 years now. And that's a good feeder into buying as well. So we work with mostly healthcare companies, health and supplements, and fitness brands. And then that's who we're trying to acquire as well. So it's almost like a pipeline for us too.
Very cool. So then you just acquire, give it to the agency. So you have capital and you have the actual engine that's driving the growth, and you control the engine, right? You're not
Yep.
trusting a third party that you don't know, or you don't trust. So you control all the different parts.
Exactly. So that's the goal.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, especially the part that you mentioned about that whole arbitrage opportunity. I guess it requires still a lot of capital, a lot of expertise. But if you're able to take a brand, acquire it for a 3x, even if you keep it stable, by the time you're selling, you're doubling, tripling that same brand, right? And you haven't even needed to grow it. If you can grow it in that time, that's even better.
Well, it's easy to grow it actually because you have all these other brands that have teams in place. And so usually you can reduce expenses, raise profits, you can cross promote, you can do so much with the brands if you keep them in the same vertical. But if you start to buy just random brands like Thrasio did, then you can't really combine them as much and you can't really cross market them as much. And it's a little harder to do that. Now, I will say it sounds clean and smart, but it's a lot messier in the back end. So it sounds like, oh, that's a great strategy. But yeah, it's messy and it's hard and it's a lot of conversations. It's conversations with business owners all the time that want to sell their brands, but it's how much do they want to sell them? What is it going to go for? And sometimes when you talk to a business owner, they don't always like to hear what I have to say. I try to be as nice as possible, but it's one of those things like I want to make it realistic and know what we're willing to put in and everything. But yeah, it gets hairy at times.
And you were talking about diligence, and what are some of the things that come up when you start going into the closet to pull out those skeletons that are really like maybe deal breakers, or things that you see are like, okay, well, this could be an obstacle that we weren't aware of?
The biggest obstacle we always see is the seller. The seller usually has this image of how much their brand is worth because it's your baby. I mean, you've poured your blood, sweat, and tears into this, and you've worked your butt off to get it to where it is. And then somebody comes along from the outside and they're like, yeah, it's worth like 2.5 to 3x. And then you're like, well, I want this, or I want this much. And it's hard to get to those numbers that usually the seller wants.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this constantly, and I'm not just referring to a personal case between you and I. It's one of those things that's like, I see businesses, we evaluated one the other day and he was like, yeah, I want about 500 to 600,000 for it. And I was like, it's worth like 200,000 maybe. And because it was just such a small business, but it was a cool brand and the branding was great and it looked good. Everything was really great. And he was a great designer, but he wasn't a great business runner. And so there was no profit there. And so usually in due diligence, we uncover a lot of things that we can clean up, but it's not our job to value that in. And so we'll go in there and be like, yeah, we can clean that up, that up, that up, that up. Like we don't have to spend that much on that. We don't have to spend that much on that. And we can tell that from due diligence because we've looked at so many brands, but it's not our job to value that in when we're buying it from the client. And that was actually a big thing that we had problems with was like, oh yeah, we can clean all that up and we'll give you the value for it, being the seller. But really that's our superpower. So we don't want to give them value for our superpower. And there's always a lot of what ifs. And if I would have done this differently, it would be worth more, or I would have profited more. And if you're going to the table to sell your brand, you need to have your books cleaned up. You need to have all that cleaned up. Like don't keep an agency around that's doing nothing for you because it's going to show up later on when you're trying to sell and it's going to devalue your company. So a lot of things in due diligence, just that people can get rid of and they're scared to pull the trigger because it's hard for them to have hard conversations. And we don't have that problem as much to have those hard conversations because then you can increase value pretty quickly. But that's usually the hardest part is once we start doing financial due diligence is finding those things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And once you get the brand, you acquire it, you pull it into your team, you guys strategize. Do you sometimes start picking things apart and redesign the brand entirely, or do you try to really stay true to what they've created and just ride that wave?
Yes. So like second part. So I never like to go in and just flip everything. I don't like to go consultant mode and just be like, we're going to take this table and just flip it over and we're going to bring in a new table and everybody's going to change. And that's what a lot of private equity does is they'll buy a brand, they'll bring in their own C-suite, meaning the CEO, the COO, the CMO, and they'll pretty much let that whole team go. I've seen it firsthand. And that original C-suite was probably the ones that like helped build it. So the second acquisition we did is actually an incredible brand. And I constantly reassure them that like we're not coming in here to change the ship because you guys have built something incredible here. And the founder and CEO is staying on and she's the influencer, she's everything. And everybody is staying on. It's essentially they're bringing us in to help fill in holes in their bucket. So they have this bucket, they're pouring money into it, but there's big holes at the bottom that are just like the money's falling out. And so what my partner and I are doing is we're plugging the bucket. So nothing is changing in the day-to-day for them. Keep doing what you're doing and we're going to come behind you and fix certain things. And so to give you a hard example of that, the very first thing we're working on is not more ads, it's not more traffic, it's actually making the website faster. Because right now their homepage and their sales page has a 15-second load time, 15
Wow.
seconds of load time. And that's just crushing conversions. But here's the thing is they're still converting at an incredibly high rate. And so if you take that 15-second load time and take it down to under 2, which it should be, number one, you're going to convert a lot higher. It's going to create a better user experience, but your ads are going to get significantly cheaper because when Google sees that they click on a link, they go to this page and they bounce back right away, they're going to penalize you. If Facebook sees somebody click on a link and it goes over to the sales page, they bounce back before it even loads, Facebook's going to penalize you because it hurts the Facebook experience as well. And so if we can get that website speed up, then that's the main thing we're working on. And it's going to be a big project. We didn't realize how big it was going to be until we really got in there and figured out like how they built this. And it's very it's built with lots of different things. Like there's different apps involved. There's WooCommerce, there's funnels, there's WordPress, there's Shopify, and there's another Shopify. And so we have to Frankenstein this all together to then speed up the main website, which is on WordPress, then goes to WooCommerce, which is inside a funnel, inside an app. So it's one of those things like we're trying to figure that piece out first, but to the team that's there, nothing changes. And then we're also an advisory board. So we're on the board for them. We're essentially coaching them, coaching the CEO and the two founders, like coaching them on how to, automate their workflows more, how to focus on what really matters. When you're releasing a product, what to think about. They're crazy product launchers and they launch like products every month. And so we're trying to get them to think more long-term with products instead of that short-term launch window because they've been a launch brand for so long. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm sure it was answered somewhere in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and kind of you brought up the next thing, this always comes to mind, how important is that risk to you, Amazon versus D2C, website, other channels, right? If they're too heavily reliant on Amazon, then that does pose a risk because you are acquiring a brand that is profitable and you immediately start, generating revenue as soon as you make the purchase. But at the same time, there's always you don't know what Amazon is going to do, right? For everybody. So are you looking for brands that have like a mix, or it doesn't really matter?
It does matter, but I'm not like agnostic to one or the other. It's all about just, is the brand a great brand? But when you are 100% on Amazon, that is incredibly scary because I've seen it. I had a friend who sold his brand for $28 million. It was a supplement company. And 6 months after the buyer acquired it, the whole account was suspended. And so that's incredibly terrifying. And they were suspended for 3 months, the whole account was, and they got it back up, but they could never recover their ranks. And so this $28 million brand is a shell of itself now because they could never recover it. And this wasn't like somebody that bought it that didn't know what they were doing. It was a private equity firm, which doesn't say much, but it was actually a private equity firm that focused on e-commerce. So it wasn't just like a typical private equity firm. And That's terrifying. We looked at a couple brands. We looked at a $3.5 million supplement brand on top of the one that we purchased into, and they were 100% on Amazon. And that was scary because it's supplement space. It's going to get suspended. It's not a matter of if it will, it's when it will. And so you will always get suspended in supplements, whether it be just your product or the whole account. And so you have to be prepared for that. And then we were looking at this brand over here. They're not even on Amazon yet. And so that's the one we looked at more specifically. And so we're actually getting them on Amazon right now. It's going to take a while to get them on Amazon, but it's because we're having them focus on what they do well first. And then Amazon, we're going to tack on later on. So that's going to be one of my big projects over the next year, is getting them on Amazon and then scaling them on Amazon. And so it doesn't matter what they do, but this one's completely off Amazon. So it's safe. It's a very safe business because they are making all their money with no reliant on algorithms, not really reliant on ads yet, because it's mostly organic traffic from people that follow her on Instagram.
So you get in there and find the low-hanging fruit, is what I'm hearing. So in some cases, it's website speed. I mean, that case of 15 seconds, that's crazy, right?
Mhm.
But I see the complexity there. So maybe it wasn't so easy to make that fix for them. And so you need to kind of like get somebody to really roll up their sleeves and get in there. Or if it's, hey, you're not even selling on Amazon at all, or you don't have this or you don't have that thing. So really what you guys are doing is just acquiring, finding the low-hanging fruit and going down the list. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the approach. And then at some point, do you feel like you can flatline, or there's always something to do?
There's always going to be something to do. So the cool thing about this brand is we found all these things that we could, I don't want to say fix because they're still doing incredibly well. Optimize is a better word. But the key thing is, like, don't do them all at once. Like, we're not just going to go in there and be like, we need to do this. We're going to do the website speed first, and we're going to focus on that until it's done. Website speed is done. We're now going to focus on scaling Facebook ads, because now that we have the website speed fixed, we can now focus on scaling ads because it will convert better as a result. Another big one is email marketing. And so that's something that we've been working with them already. And so luckily I have a very smart partner as well. So his project is website speed. My project is going to be more the membership experience / email marketing. That's what we're trying to determine what I'm going to work on. I'm working on Facebook ads right now, but we're actually descaling them. We're taking the budget back just because we're going to see if it has any effect on sales because of that slow speed. And then we'll accelerate that back up eventually. But I'm also working on email marketing and community. So that's my project over here. And then we have a whole list of things that we can work on. Retention, failed payments, because anytime you have a subscription product, you're going to have failed payments. So fixing that problem. So there's this list that we created in the due diligence phase. And now we're just kind of working through that list slowly and methodically, but not overwhelming the team in the process, and letting them still do their thing, and then giving them advice on the back end as well.
And Profitable Pineapple is now, sounds like, more than just Amazon. You guys are handling, and the team is handling, a lot of these other aspects of e-commerce as a whole.
So Profitable Pineapple in a shell of itself, like, is Amazon. Like, it does Amazon PPC, it does Google ads for Amazon-based brands. I have a separate brand called Freedom Brands. That's the acquisition company. And so that's the one that I have with my partner. And that's the one we're buying brands with, but then we're using Profitable Pineapple's resources to help market them. So the first acquisition we did in March of 2024, Profitable Pineapple pretty much runs that. Like, it runs the marketing of it. And then the second one that we just did this month, that's the one we are getting them on Amazon with Profitable Pineapple, but they're not doing much right now. And so the Freedom Brand side of things is what's doing that part. And that's the one that we're actually going in and working for them too.
Very cool. One more quick question. TikTok, is it still important? How much do you guys rely on that?
We have not for either of these two brands. However, I have another company that is full TikTok. And so that's a company that sells a digital product, and it's a $97 a month membership, and it's all TikTok. So she's an influencer on TikTok. She has 330,000 followers. We only do TikTok ads. And where TikTok comes in is it's a Wild West right now. So it reminds me of Amazon back like 8 years ago. It's cheap ads. So to give you a quick example, TikTok's CPMs, which is the cost per 1,000 impressions, is like $1 or less. On Facebook, it's like $14. On Google, it's like $20. And so that's the advertising spread across those platforms. So we can spend $1 to get in front of 1,000 people on TikTok or $20 on Google. Which one are you going to put more money into? And so we're dumping more money into TikTok right now than anything else for that brand. And that's on the list for the brand we just acquired. So it's using the expertise we have over here. I mean, does anybody know TikTok yet? I mean, it's such a wild west that the expertise, I'll put that in quotation marks, and we'll bring that same thing over here to the brand we just bought. And so I think TikTok is still an incredible opportunity. And if you're paying $1 for CPMs, you're going to get overflow traffic to buy on Amazon. So if you're advertising a product and you get a good ad creative on it, then it's going to overflow to Amazon, even if you don't have TikTok Shop set up. I will caveat this with one big like asterisk, that you have to focus on creative. If you're not constantly pumping out new creative like ads or video ads, it's going to not work as well for you. So for this brand that we have solely based on TikTok, we're coming out with 5 to 15 videos a week right now. And most of those are getting advertising. And so you have to keep pumping out creative. Otherwise, it just kind of dies. Like TikTok will just stop serving it.
Amazing. I appreciate these insights. Travis, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, either if they're an Amazon seller and they need support, I know you have a wait list, but if someone wanted to chat with you, or if they had a brand that they were looking to sell that might fit your wheelhouse, how can they get in touch?
So profitablepineapple.com, there's an apply to work with us button. You click that, you fill out a short application, and then you'll schedule a call with us, and then we'll see if we'll do a full audit on your Amazon account as well at no cost to you. So that's one thing that we do, profitablepineapple.com. If you're interested in acquisition, you can also fill that out and just put like interested in acquisition, but we do have a website for that too. It's called freedombrands.net.
Cool. Once again, Travis, some good nuggets of gold here. Oh, it looks like we have one question before we close. It says someone's asking about Pinterest ads for launching. You had any experience with Pinterest ads?
I have no experience with Pinterest ads. I'm guessing though that it's probably a Wild West over there too, because there's probably not a lot of people using them. So I would explore the use of them just by looking at like, just try it. Just try $50, throw it towards it, see how much it costs. And what I like to look at first when I'm ever using an ad platform is that CPM metric, the cost per milli, which is how much does it cost per 1,000. And that's usually like it tells you how competitive it's going to be, or how much you can push it. So $1 for 1,000 views on TikTok, I'd pay that all day long because it's a video view. Then Pinterest, which might be just a picture. I don't know how Pinterest works, so I do know how it works, but I don't.
I've run some Pinterest ads, not very successful, but yeah, you get a lot of visibility and it is fairly cheap. And you can see the boards they have all, it saves how many views you've got. I've been testing a lot of different stuff. Hulu ads. I actually have a call scheduled with Reddit. They reached out to me. They want to do some ads. So I think it's good to just test new things and try to find blue oceans wherever you can, right?
I love to test one new ad platform a quarter. If you have the budget, if you don't have the budget, one new ad platform every 6 months. Commit to $1,000 and just commit to one ad platform, and you never know what's going to work. Like you just never know. And then when one hits, you start to scale it. And that's what's cool. But yeah, I always recommend trying anything, but like, I'm sure there's a Pinterest ad course out there. So go find it and then take that.
There you go. Again, Travis, thanks for the gold nuggets here today. I appreciate your time and chatting with you, and looking forward to speaking to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks everyone for watching. Catch you on the next one.